Have you ever leaned in for a kiss and felt the energy shift in a split second? The warmth was there, the connection was real, the eye contact lingered just a little longer, and then suddenly something changed. They stiffened, they hesitated, they pulled back, or maybe they kissed you, but it felt restrained, controlled, distant, like their body was present but their soul was somewhere else. And you were left wondering, what just happened? Was it me? Did I move too fast? Did I imagine the connection? If you've ever loved someone with avoidant attachment, this moment probably feels painfully familiar. What most people don't understand is that when an avoidant avoids kissing an empath, it is rarely about attraction, it is rarely about chemistry, and it is almost never about not caring. It is about fear, a deep, silent, overwhelming fear that awakens the moment intimacy stops being physical and starts becoming emotional. According to attachment theory, first developed by John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth, the avoidant attachment style is rooted in early emotional conditioning, where closeness felt unsafe, overwhelming, or unreliable. So when an empath leans in for a kiss, they are not just offering affection, they are offering connection, they are offering presence, they are offering emotional depth. And for the avoidant, that can feel like stepping toward the very thing they were wired to survive without. This is not a story about rejection. It is a story about self-protection. And the more you understand what is happening inside them in that exact moment, the less you will blame yourself and the more you will see the invisible battle playing out behind their calm exterior. It is not about the kiss itself. An avoidant can kiss casually. They can kiss playfully. They can even kiss passionately in certain situations. What they struggle with is the kind of kiss that carries emotion, the kind that lingers, the kind that says, I see you, the kind that feels like two nervous systems syncing up. When an empath kisses, they do not just press lips, they connect energy, they slow down, they soften, they melt into the moment. And that depth is exactly what unsettles the avoidant, because to them, a kiss like that is not just physical affection, it is emotional exposure, it is a vulnerability without words, it is closeness that cannot be intellectualized or controlled, and control is the avoidant's greatest shield. Inside their body, something subtle but powerful happens. Their chest tightens, their breathing shifts, their mind starts scanning for danger, not because you are dangerous, but because intimacy feels unpredictable. And unpredictability once meant pain. To an empath, a kiss feels like safety. To an avoidant, it can feel like surrender. And surrender feels risky. If they let themselves fully feel it, they might start to need it. And needing someone has always been the thing they promised themselves they would never do. So instead of leaning deeper, they lean away. Instead of softening, they tense. Instead of staying in the moment, they pull back emotionally, even if their lips stay for a second longer. And from the outside, it looks confusing, but inside, it feels like survival. One of the avoidant's worst fears is being truly seen. Empaths have a quiet ability to read emotions without words. They feel shifts in tone and breath and subtle body language. When they kiss, they are not just experiencing sensation, they are sensing the emotional state of the other person. And the avoidant feels that they are being read. They feel that their carefully constructed independence is being gently dismantled in that moment. A deep kiss from an empath says, I am here with you, I feel you, I accept you. And that level of acceptance can paradoxically feel terrifying, because if someone sees you that clearly, they can also hurt you that deeply. The avoidant mind has learned that the safest way to avoid pain is to avoid exposure. So when an empath's kiss starts dissolving their emotional armor, a silent alarm goes off. It says, this is getting too real. This is getting too close. If I let this continue, I might fall. And falling means losing control. It means depending. It means risking heartbreak. So they pull back, not because the moment was empty, but because it was too full, too charged, too emotionally significant. And what hurts the most is that the empath often interprets this withdrawal as rejection, when in reality it is the avoidant's fear of losing the very connection they are beginning to feel. For the avoidant, intimacy often registers in the nervous system as danger. Their body learned early on that emotional closeness could lead to disappointment, neglect, or overwhelm. So even as adults, when they want love, when they crave connection, when they genuinely care, their nervous system does not always cooperate. A deep, emotionally connected kiss can activate old patterns that have nothing to do with you. It can trigger the same protective response that once kept them from being hurt. That is why sometimes right after a tender moment, they grow distant. They change the subject. They make a joke. They check their phone. They create space. It is not that the kiss meant nothing. It is that it meant too much. In that instant, they may have felt their walls weakening. They may have felt a softness they are not used to holding. And softness feels vulnerable. Vulnerability feels risky. So they retreat to regain emotional balance to someone with secure attachment. A kiss builds connection. To an avoidant, it can feel like stepping toward a cliff edge where they might lose their emotional footing. And the tragedy is that part of them wants to jump into the connection, while another part is desperately pulling them back. At the core of it all is the fear of needing someone. An empath's kiss is rarely casual. It carries care, intention, depth. It says, I am choosing this moment with you. And if the avoidant allows themselves to fully receive that, they risk forming an attachment that feels undeniable. They risk craving your presence. They risk missing you. They risk depending on the emotional warmth you bring. And for someone who built their identity around self-sufficiency, that feels like losing a part of themselves. Their worst fear is not love. It is the vulnerability that love demands. It is the possibility that one day, the person they allowed themselves to need could walk away. So they try to prevent that future pain by limiting how deep they let the present moment go. Even if that means holding back from a kiss that could have brought them closer. Even if that means confusing the empath who only wanted to share connection. When you understand this, you start to see that the avoidant is not running from you. They are running from the intensity of what they feel. They are running from the depth of attachment that a single emotionally charged kiss can ignite. They avoid kissing empaths not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much. And feeling that much threatens the emotional walls they spent a lifetime building. If you have been on the receiving end of that hesitation, know this. It was not about your worth. It was about their fear. The kiss you offered was not rejected because it lacked value. It was avoided because it carried the power to change everything. What makes it even more complicated is the way empaths experience physical affection. An empath does not kiss out of habit or obligation. They kiss with presence, with emotion, with awareness of the other person's inner world. Their touch carries intention. Their closeness carries warmth. And their affection is rarely surface level. So when they lean in, it is not just a gesture. It is a form of emotional communication. The avoidant feels this instantly, even if they cannot explain it in words. They sense that this is not a casual moment. This is not just chemistry. This is connection, and connection feels heavy to someone who has spent most of their life learning how to keep emotional distance. The empath's kiss feels deeper, slower, more meaningful. It carries emotional weight, and that weight triggers the avoidance instinct to protect themselves, because the more meaningful a moment feels, the more dangerous it seems. If this kiss matters, then the person giving it matters. If the person matters, then losing them would hurt. And if losing them would hurt, then the safest choice is to never get that attached in the first place. So even when they want the kiss, even when part of them longs for it, they hesitate, they hold back, they keep one foot emotionally out the door, and the empath feels it. The slight tension, the lack of full surrender, the invisible wall that seems to appear out of nowhere. Sometimes a kiss does more than create connection. It awakens memory, not always conscious memory, but emotional memory stored deep in the nervous system. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. It remembers moments of closeness that ended in pain. It remembers affection that was inconsistent or withdrawn. It remembers being vulnerable and not being met with safety. So when the avoidant finds themselves in a deeply emotional kiss, those old sensations can resurface without warning. A warmth that should feel comforting suddenly feels unfamiliar. A closeness that should feel safe feels overwhelming. It is as if their body whispers, "This is how it started last time, before everything fell apart." So instead of leaning into the present moment, they start bracing for a future hurt that has not even happened yet. The empath does not see these internal flashes. They only feel the avoidant energy shift. They notice how the warmth cools slightly, how the avoidant becomes more distant after the moment passes. But inside the avoidant, something deeper has been stirred, something they cannot easily name, something that makes closeness feel bittersweet instead of purely joyful. And to escape that uncomfortable emotional echo, they retreat into distance where things feel safer and more predictable. Another hidden fear that surfaces in these moments is the fear of needing someone. Avoidants often build their identity around independence. Strength to them means not relying on anyone, not needing reassurance. not depending on emotional support. So when a kiss with an empath begins to feel meaningful, it quietly threatens that identity because if the moment feels good, if the connection feels real, if the warmth lingers in their chest, then a dangerous thought follows. I might start to need this. And once that thought appears, the alarm goes off. Needing someone means vulnerability. It means opening the door to disappointment. It means giving another person the power to affect your emotional state. And that is exactly the kind of power avoidants learn to avoid. So even if the kiss was beautiful, even if it stirred something soft inside them, they may step back afterward. They may create emotional distance. They may act casual or detached, as if nothing significant happened. It is not because the moment was empty, it is because it was too meaningful, and meaning creates attachment, and attachment creates the possibility of loss. When an empath gets close emotionally, the avoidant can start to feel cornered even when no pressure is being applied. Empaths naturally close emotional gaps. They ask deeper questions. They hold eye contact longer. They express affection without hesitation. And this emotional presence can feel intense to someone who is used to keeping things at a safe distance. So when a kiss becomes a moment of true emotional connection, the avoidant may feel like the walls are closing in, not because the empath is doing anything wrong, but because the closeness feels inescapable. It feels like a step toward a depth they are not sure they can handle. Their mind starts to wonder what this moment means. Does this mean commitment? Does this mean expectations? Does this mean I will have to open up more than I am ready for? The kiss becomes symbolic. It is no longer just lips meeting. It becomes a doorway into deeper, emotional territory, and that doorway can feel overwhelming. So they hesitate, they pull back, they slow things down, they may even act confused about their own feelings. And the empath senses the shift. They feel the emotional distance growing even after such a close moment. And that contrast can feel heartbreaking. For many avoidants, a kiss represents a turning point. They are highly sensitive to moments that feel like emotional milestones. They may not say it out loud, but inside they are constantly tracking how deep things are getting. And when a kiss carries genuine emotional weight, it can feel like crossing an invisible line. On one side of that line is casual connection. On the other side is emotional involvement. And emotional involvement feels risky because it comes with expectations, vulnerability, and the possibility of heartbreak. So when the kiss feels real, when it lingers in their mind, when it softens their defenses, they may suddenly feel the urge to slow everything down. They may take space. They may become less expressive. They may create distance where there was once warmth. Not because they regret the moment, but because they fear what it could lead to. The avoidant does not fear the kiss itself. They fear the emotional path that the kiss represents. They fear the deeper bond, the growing attachment, the silent promise of closeness. And underneath all of that is a quiet truth they rarely admit. They know that if they allow themselves to fully feel that connection, it could change them, could soften them, it could make them care more deeply than they planned. And that possibility is both beautiful and terrifying. So they step back not because the moment lacked meaning, but because it carried too much of it. What many people never realize is that vulnerability feels physically uncomfortable for an avoidant. It is not just a thought in their mind, it is a sensation in their body. When a kiss becomes emotionally real, their shoulders may tense, their chest may feel tight, their thoughts may start racing. They might not even understand why it is happening. All they know is that something inside them is telling them to step back. This reaction did not appear out of nowhere. It was built over years of learning that closeness can lead to disappointment or emotional overwhelm. So when an empath offers a kiss, filled with warmth and emotional presence, the avoidance system interprets it as a signal that things are getting serious. And seriousness feels unsafe to someone who survived by staying detached. They are not rejecting the affection. They are responding to an internal alarm that says slow down. Protect yourself. Stay in control. And that is why, after a deeply emotional moment, they may suddenly become quiet or distant. They are trying to regulate themselves. They are trying to return to a place where they feel stable again. Inside an avoidant, there is often a push and pull that never fully stops. One part of them wants closeness. They enjoy the warmth, the connection, the feeling of being understood. But another part is deeply afraid of what that closeness might cost them. So when an empath leans in for a kiss, both parts become active at the same time. The part that wants love moves forward, the part that fears dependence pulls back. This creates hesitation. It creates mixed signals. It creates moments where they seem affectionate, one second and distant the next. And the empath often feels confused because the connection felt real. The warmth felt mutual. The moment felt genuine. But inside the avoidant, a silent tug of war was happening. The kiss may have awakened feelings they were not prepared to face. It may have made them realize how much they actually care. And that realization can feel overwhelming. So instead of expressing those emotions, they retreat into distance, where things feel safer, more familiar, more controlled. Many avoidants carry a hidden belief that love eventually becomes a trap. Not because love itself is bad, but because their early experiences taught them that closeness comes with pressure, expectations, or emotional pain. So when a kiss feels deeply connected, they may unconsciously interpret it as the beginning of something that will limit their freedom. The warmth of the moment can quickly be followed by thoughts like, what if this becomes too serious? What if I lose my independence? What if I get stuck in something I cannot escape? These thoughts are rarely spoken out loud, but they shape their behavior. They start to slow down emotionally. They create space. They may become less affectionate, not because they stopped caring, but because they are trying to protect their sense of autonomy. To them, a kiss from an empath is not just affection. It feels like the opening chapter of a deeper emotional story, and deeper emotional stories come with risks, responsibilities, and vulnerability. So they step back to keep the story from going too far, too fast. Another reason avoidants avoid emotionally charged kisses is the intensity of emotional depth that empaths naturally bring. Empaths do not just exist on the surface. They feel things deeply. They connect with sincerity. They express affection in a way that feels soulful rather than casual. And this depth can feel overwhelming to someone who is used to keeping their emotions at a safe distance. When an empath kisses, it carries a sense of meaning. It feels intentional. It feels intimate. It feels like a moment that matters. And for the avoidant, that intensity can feel like too much too soon. They may worry that they cannot match that depth. They may fear that they will disappoint the empath if they cannot open up at the same level. So instead of risking that emotional imbalance, they pull back. They create space. They keep things lighter and less emotionally charged. It is not because they do not feel anything. It is because the depth of what they feel scares them. And the deeper the moment feels, the stronger their instinct to retreat becomes. If you could step inside the avoidance mind during one of these moments, you would not find coldness or indifference. You would find conflict. You would find emotion that feels too big to handle. You would find a heart that wants connection, but a nervous system that does not trust it. When an empath leans in for a kiss, the avoidant may feel a sudden rush of warmth, followed by a wave of fear. They may think this feels good, but what happens if it ends? They may feel a desire to stay close and an urge to pull away at the exact same time, and that inner conflict is exhausting. So sometimes the easy solution is distance. It is safer to avoid the kiss than to feel everything it might awaken. It is safer to keep things light than to risk deep attachment. But here is the truth that often goes unspoken. When an avoidant avoids kissing an empath, it is not because the moment lacks emotion. It is because the moment carries too much of it. That kiss has the power to soften their defenses, to awaken feelings they tried to bury, to make them care more deeply than they planned. And caring deeply is the very thing they have spent their lives trying to control. So if you have ever felt that hesitation, if you've ever wondered why they pulled back in a moment that felt so real, understand this: you were not being rejected. Your affection was not unwanted. The moment was not meaningless. It was powerful enough to touch a part of them that feels both longing and fear at the same time. And sometimes the avoidant's worst fear is not intimacy itself. It is how deeply they might fall if they ever let themselves fully receive it. Beneath the surface of the avoidance behavior is a quiet fear that rarely gets spoken out loud, the fear of getting attached. Not just liking someone, not just enjoying their presence, but truly needing them. A kiss from an empath can spark that exact fear because it is rarely just physical. It carries warmth, sincerity, and emotional intention. It says without words, I'm here with you. And when an avoidant feels that message, something inside them begins to soften. But as soon as that softness appears, another voice rises up inside them. It whispers, be careful. This is how it starts. Because to the avoidant, attachment is not always associated with comfort. It is associated with loss, disappointment, or feeling emotionally overwhelmed. So when a kiss begins to form a bond, they sense it immediately. They feel the shift from something casual to something meaningful, and that shift triggers fear. If they allow themselves to get attached, they might start thinking about you when you are not there. They might start needing your presence to feel calm. They might start caring in a way that makes your absence painful, and that level of emotional investment feels dangerous. So they hold back, they keep the kiss brief, they avoid moments that feel too intimate. Not because they feel nothing, but because they sense the possibility of attachment growing, and that possibility terrifies them. For many avoidants, affection can feel like pressure, even when no pressure is intended. An empath's kiss is often gentle, sincere, and emotionally present, but to someone who is sensitive to expectations, even a simple affectionate moment can carry a hidden weight. The avoidant mind may start asking silent questions. Does this mean they expect more from me? Are they becoming more emotionally invested? Will I have to open up in ways I'm not ready for? These thoughts can appear in an instant, even if the kiss itself was soft and natural. The avoidant does not just experience the moment, they imagine the emotional consequences that might follow. And those imagined expectations can feel overwhelming. They might worry about disappointing you. They might fear not being able to meet your emotional depth. They might feel like the relationship is becoming more serious than they intended. So instead of leaning deeper into the affection, they create space. They slow things down. They shift the energy back to something lighter or more casual. To the empath, it feels confusing. The kiss felt real. The connection felt mutual. But suddenly there is distance. What the empath does not see is the pressure building inside the avoidant's mind, even when no one said a single word. Avoidants spend years building emotional walls. These walls are not built out of cruelty or indifference. They are built out of survival. Each wall represents a moment when vulnerability felt unsafe. Each brick was placed there to prevent future pain. And over time, those walls become part of their identity. They feel strong behind them, they feel in control, they feel protected. But an empath's kiss has a way of slipping through those walls. It is not forceful, it is not demanding. It is soft, warm, and sincere. And that softness is exactly what makes it powerful, because it does not attack the walls, it melts them. In that moment, the avoidant may feel a level of emotional openness they are not used to. They may feel seen, accepted, and connected. And while part of them enjoys that feeling, another part panics. If the walls come down, what happens next? What if they become vulnerable? What if they get hurt? So after the kiss, they rebuild the walls. They create distance. They act more detached. Not because the moment meant nothing, but because it meant enough to threaten their defenses. One of the most confusing things about avoidance is that they often want closeness just as much as anyone else. They are not emotionless. They are not incapable of love. In fact, they may feel things very deeply. But the difference is that their desire for closeness is always accompanied by fear. So when an empath leans in for a kiss, the avoidant might feel a spark of warmth. They might want to stay in that moment. They might even feel a quiet happiness. But almost immediately, fear follows. What if this becomes serious? What if I lose my freedom? What if I start caring too much? This creates a painful inner contradiction. They want the connection, but they fear what the connection might lead to. So they freeze, they hesitate, they send mixed signals. One moment they seem present and affectionate, the next moment they seem distant and guarded. To the empath, it feels like emotional whiplash. But inside the avoidant, it feels like two opposite forces pulling at the same time. The heart moves forward, the fear pulls back. And the result is hesitation in moments that should feel natural and easy. Or at the deepest level, the avoidance fear is not really about the kiss. It is about what the kiss represents. A kiss from an empath is not just contact between two people. It is a symbol of connection, intimacy, and emotional merging. It is a step toward deeper attachment. It is a moment where walls soften and hearts open. And for someone who has spent a lifetime protecting themselves from emotional pain, that moment can feel overwhelming. The avoidant knows, even if only subconsciously, that allowing themselves to fully feel that connection could change everything. It could make them more open. It could make them more vulnerable. It could make them care in ways they cannot easily control. And once you care deeply, you risk being hurt deeply. So they hold back. They avoid the kiss, or they keep it short, restrained, and emotionally distant. Not because they do not feel the connection, but because they feel it too strongly. The empath's kiss touches the part of them that longs for closeness, but it also touches the part of them that fears losing control, losing independence, or losing someone they finally allowed themselves to need. So if you have ever felt that hesitation, that emotional distance in a moment that should have been tender, remember this. It was not a reflection of your worth. It was not a lack of attraction. It was not a meaningless moment. It was a moment powerful enough to awaken both their deepest longing and their deepest fear at the same time. And sometimes, for an avoidant, that combination is the most overwhelming experience of all.